Welcome everybody. This is going to be a walkthrough going over task 6 of the NSA Codebreakers challenge. The last challenge we had identified some files from a device that had been acquired, and then we were tasked with identifying an IP address and found it through some data appended to the end of a file that was gzipped or bzipped, and it appeared to be a Mongo database connection with username, password, and then database, and then collection to grab. In this task, we're going to be logging or hitting the server now, and then trying to identify any secondary point of contacts within the network that are communicating with this server, and hopefully we find something good. So without further ado, let's hop right into it by reading the description. So while you were working, we found a small US cellular provider which issued the SIM card recovered from the device, Blue Horizon Mobile. As advised by NSA legal counsel, we reached out to notify them of a possible compromise and shared the IP address you discovered. Our analysts explained that sophisticated cyber threat actors may use co-opted servers to exfiltrate data, and Blue Horizon Mobile confirmed that the IP address is for an old, unused database server in their internal network. It was unmaintained and, unfortunately, reached by any device in the network. We believe the threat actors using the server as a dead drop, and it is the only lead we have to find them. Blue Horizon has agreed to give us limited access to the server on their internal network via an SSH jump box. They will also make sure not to make any other changes that might tip off the actor. They have given you the authority to access the system, but unfortunately they could not find credentials. So you only have access to the database directly on TCP port 27017. So we need to use the information from the device firmware and below, SSH jump box location and credentials, to log into the database via an SSH tunnel and discover the IP address of the system picking up the dead drop. Be patient, as the actor probably only checks the dead drop periodically, and then note the jump box IP is 100.127.0.2, so don't report yourself by mistake. So with that, we're giving two files. Looks like an SSH jump box key, and then a way to authenticate against the public key that the server has. So yeah, let's get our environment set up. I think I have a terminal open. Whoops, don't need Geedra. We're going to keep that open until we need that for the future challenges. Here, we can make our 6 challenge directory. Come back over here, download the file. Come back. Move. Downloads should be the only file there. And then we're going to want to set this to 600, otherwise the permissions on the jump box key won't be correct. I would show you it's just going to be the key, but it's just a normal SSH key, and if I don't show you, then it's easier for me to keep it anonymous. So with that, we're going to SSH in using the jump box key. The credentials, not the credentials, but the user to hit is at user@external-support Blue Horizon. So I'm going to put this up to the side. user@external-support.bluehorizonmobile.com. And then if we SSH in, it should allow us to hit in. It might. I've already SSH'd in once already, so it didn't give me the do you accept the connection through this. So you just type yes. And then you can see that we're only limited to port forwarded, so it's not even going to let us interact with it. So since it's just a port forward, we can do TAC NL. TAC N means we don't really care about dropping into a PTY, so don't do any operations. And then L is just for forwarding. Then we're going to forward localhost 2717, just to keep the ports synonymous between the two, against our compromised machine, which is at 100.107.27.79. We knew that from the previous challenge because that was the IP that we were trying to connect to, or that the binary would try to connect to. And then that will also be at 27017. So now that's not going to give you any output, but if it works, it shouldn't crash or shouldn't close. We can possibly test by connecting a localhost on 27017. Doesn't look like anything will come back to you. I think that's just how MongoDB handles. So if you haven't figured it out yet, we're using a MongoDB instance or connecting to one. MongoDB is a database, uses NoSQL, but we need a way to connect to it. So I'm just going to search MongoDB sh. I think if you just search MongoDB way to connect or something, MongoDB will show up. I like to use just their MongoDB shell. Let's make sure that we download the x64 version. And once that downloads, we can install it. I'm pretty sure they just don't have a global Debian package, so we can't just pull it from there. It's going to change to there, change to downloads. Let's go sudo apt install. As you can see, I've already done this once just to make sure it worked. Once that gets installed, we should have our MongoDB binary. So we can do mongo sh and just see if it connects. Looks like it tried to connect to localhost right away, which, if this is forwarding correctly, is going to try and connect to the remote one. That may not have been the best idea if we're trying to be stealthily and trying to do this as quick as possible. But since they're not using authentication yet, it should fail the connection and doesn't know what database to even connect to yet. But now we can use this information to connect to that database. So by default, you can just do mongo sh and then the URL. So MongoDB is going to specify, or this URL will specify the username, the password, the IP to connect to, the port. In this case, we don't actually want to connect to that because we can't hit that. We want to connect to localhost because that will be forwarded to that IP. And then auth source will just specify to use this database as our connection database. I accidentally typed that. So when we first log in, you'll see that you have this test prompt, and if you do help, you can get a list of commands. Zoom out a little bit. I might actually just make this full screen, because we don't need that other one. We can have a couple commands like show databases, show collections. So if we do show databases, we can see we have a snapshot. If we do show collections, we don't have permission because all we really have permission to is on this database or snapshot. So we're going to want to use that database by saying use. I'm actually going to change our connection scheme. I'm actually going to just add the database right here after the / and before the question mark, because then this specifies that I want to automatically jump into that database. And so then if we run this by, or if we get logged out and we need to connect back in, it just makes it easier so we don't have to forget. So now if we do help, we can do something like show collections. And it looks like we have a collection named files. We can do show profile. Doesn't look like we have permission. Show users. It looks like there's one user on this database, maintenance, which we logged in as. Here are their database that we can connect to. Here's the roles. Here's the mechanism. If we do show roles, we have DB owner, user admin, all the other stuff. If we do show logs, doesn't look like we have permission for logs. So now comes the fun part of this challenge, was just trying to identify what you had permission to do and what you could do with it. If you're ever stuck, the MongoDB kind of has a way to give you what kind of commands you can hit. So if you wanted to run commands against the database, you'd use db dot, and then you can do tab completion to see what kind of commands you have. And the nifty one we have is list commands. So this will go through and list. Oh, that's a method. It'll list all of the commands that we have access to, and there's some good ones in here. So maybe like what's my URI? So we could do db run command. Then what's my URI? And it looks like we are coming from this address, which lines up with what the challenge had said. Our address is 100.127.02. Now more information from there. We can look through some other stuff, so maybe users info. Maybe there's something else hidden about our user that we don't know. It looks to be the exact same as what our previous information was. We have update documents, update role, update user, update, or just user info again. Top, usage by collection. Maybe that's something useful. Not sure what I did there. db.run command. Top. Oops. Top, maybe run against admin database. We don't have access to the admin database. We could use it, so we can just say use admin. But no commands should work against it since our database is specified as snapshot. Let's use snapshot again just to make sure we're on the right one. I wouldn't recommend running shutdown because that might actually shut down the entire server, and then you're not certain if it'll come back up. There's a lot of parameters right here, and this comes up to the set parameter. If we go all the way to the top, set parameter function. An interesting one to note is the always record traffic. If we look this up, we do MongoDB and then always record traffic. Is there a set parameter? Let's go to set parameter instead of always record traffic. So MongoDB manual is kind of going to be our hotspot for this challenge. We're just going to be digging through the docs and see what we can come up with. So it looks like there's a list of parameters here. If we search for always record traffic, it doesn't look like it's even on there. If you dig around enough, you'll find out that always record traffic is a older config. So if we try setting that, db run command, I'm going to change up this, let's go set that to set parameter and set this to, what was it? Sorry, I forgot what it was called. Always record traffic, just copy that. Set that to 1, just to turn it on. Set parameter. So it looks like set parameter can only be run against admin. We could try running this against admin, but we're going to come up short. But what that more or less did was set up logging for the actual local instance. So this is a parameter that you might set when you run the server. Ultimately not what we want, but a lot of people probably went down that rabbit hole because it looks very enticing for something that might be connecting. You might want to record the traffic that's coming. So let's see what else we can do. Server status returns lots of administrative server statistics. Based just on that name, we probably won't be able to do anything with it. Server status. Not authorized. Makes sense. Let's go all the way back up again. Roles info. I think that's just going to be similar to what we got already. It looks like we revoke roles, revoke REPL stuff. Profile controls behavior, the performance profile, the fraction of eligible operations which are sampled for logging and profiling. Logging sounds important, so we could try profile. Let's check this one out. Profile, set that to 1. Not authorized. Makes sense. What are we authorized to do? Log rotate. List indexes, list database, list commands, list collections, kill stuff, is master, check servers, not replica, insert, host info, hello. Grant roles, get shard. Oh, more parameters possibly. Oh, it's a get parameter, so we could try and get the parameters, see if there's any of them set. We could try get log. That one sounds interesting. We're going to try that next. Get a database version. I'm going to finish scrolling. Drop stuff. Hash, database check. Validates the replication. Data size, blah, blah, blah. Collection statistics. I think this has to do with just your actual collection. Collection mod, set collection options. Cluster information, authentication, and some more other low-level stuff that you're not supposed to technically call. So what was it that we wanted? DB stats. Looks like DB stats actually gave us something back, and it just looks like number of collections, number of views. Nothing too interesting there. So this is where you might just come to the actual information on their webpage, or their documentation, and try and find stuff. So maybe we want to look at one of these commands we couldn't run. So let's look at server status first. I think there's a good way to search all documents. I don't like the idea of doing that. Is there a way to just get commands? I'm going to go back and just change this to server status. Server status. So by default, the server status command returns a document that provides an overview of the database's state. So maybe that's not what we're looking for, just based on we don't really care about the state of the database. We kind of want to know possible connections coming to and from. Another one we tried was profile, which happens to be right above it. The command enables, disables, or configures the database profile. The profiler captures and records data on the performance of write operations, cursors, and database commands. If the profiler is disabled, the command configures how slow operations are logged to the diagnostic log. This sounds interesting, just based on the fact that it can control like information on what's actually done to the collection. So here, if we set it to 2, it appears that the profiler collects data on all operations, but we didn't have permission to do this on Snapshot. For those of you that were paying very close attention when we did a show roles, there's a list of all the roles that are available on the server. There's DB owner, DB admin, read write, read, enable sharding, user admin. If we do show users, our user has read write within Snapshot, but it also has user admin. The benefit of user admin is that if we go to role management, I think we'll go to create role, it should have it. If we can find a list of privileges, not privileges, roles, list of roles. Maybe we don't want create role, but user, create user. And then go down to roles. Is there a list of roles somewhere? Perfect, roles, built-in roles, and user-defined roles. We don't care about user-defined roles right now. So it looks like there's a couple roles already predefined, as we had seen. The read-write, looks like we have the role to do these kind of commands. DB admin, looks like it has the system profile command, and that's kind of on the route where we want to go because it has the profile functionality. Blah, 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 blah. So enable profiler right here. That's kind of what we're looking for. So we're trying to turn the profiler on. DB owner. Looks like DB owner is given read write, DB admin, and user admin. So all of those above that we've already seen. But user admin has the ability to modify roles or create users with certain roles. So what if we just create a new user and log in as that one that has the ability to enable this profiler? So with that, we can then try and run the create user command. So it's going to be db.create. If we don't remember, we can just do tab. We have a create user. There's more commands in here that we could have looked through, but a lot of them were just information or something. You probably don't want to just spin up a for loop on all of the commands that we had, because there's a good chance you might drop your user or drop the database, and if that happens, then you kind of probably need a reset because there's no way for you to connect back in. So let's do create user, not user, it's just user. I'm going to do this on multiple lines. I'm actually probably shouldn't do this like this. Let's do this in a text file. That way if we mess something up, we have it on hand. Let's not do it in that directory. Let's do it in 6. If I can find 6. Don't need that one anymore. Don't need that one. Need that one. Let's do create user. db.create user. We're going to do this in a no SQL format, so that's why there's curly brackets. Spacing doesn't matter as much. You can make it look nice if you want, but I don't really care that much. Username, we're just going to say test. Could be anything. We could make it blend in. Password, you're supposed to set this to either be a prompt, but I'm just going to set it to plain text, because if we just set it to something easy, I can log in right away. Let's set the roles to, if you were to do this in like a real world example, then you probably wouldn't want to set the password, as that might be too easily guessed, or just something that's not as obvious. Let's set the role. Let's make it read write just to be safe, in case that's like a default, to the DB snapshot something. Snapshot 8. Just need this 8 part. Actually, I'll copy the whole thing. Snapshot 8, blah, blah, blah. I think I need quotes around this. So as it stands right now, this should just create a user with the permissions to read-write to that database. Not quite all we want. We're going to then give them DB owner to this DB. And if we remember back, I think DB owner should give us enough permissions to, because DB owner comes with DB admin and read-write actually, so we don't even need read-write. So if we give DB owner, it should give us DB admin, and that's all that really matters. So let's get rid of the read-write one. Oh, forgot the curly braces on the last line too. Roll, put that there, just have those single parameters, and I think that should be good. I'm going to tab those in just to make it look a little bit nicer. And I think that should be good for our user. So let's create that user and see what we can do with him. I can just close this, I think, and it'll probably error at me, but that's fine. So it looks like it said it worked. It just says okay. So let's show users. And we now have a new user for this database called test, and then he's the DB owner of that database. So I'm just going to do it easily by just logging out, change this to test and password, and now we're logged back in. So now if we did something like db run command server status, see if we have permission to do that now. We still don't have that permission. But what about profile? Because that's the other one we were interested in. Let's set this to profile at 1. And it looks like we got an OK this time. So that's good news. What profile does is that it's going to now spin up the profiler for the system.profile resource. So if we do show collections, we now have this system.profile. We can then do db.system.profile.find. And what the find command does is it dumps everything from that profile or from that collection. So this is pretty much just another collection. So we can do db.files.find, but you're not going to find anything in there, as our uploader should upload to that directory and then pull it down. At this point, we were told in the challenge description that we need to be patient as the actor only checks the dead drop periodically. Note the jump box IP is blah, 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 so don't report yourself by mistake. We can test this profile just by logging out and logging back in, and then identifying to see if anything was in there. Doesn't look like anything was put in there yet, but if we do a, what did I set the profiler to? Oh, I set it to 1. Let's set the profiler to 2. If we do a find, there's nothing there. But if we do a second find, it now sees that we ran the query find on this profile. 1, you won't get all this deep lore, not lore, but deep properties. So you need to set that to 2. And then the important fact is that it actually tells you where the client's coming from. So what it could do is just sit on this on loop until it comes, but every time we run it, it's going to hit ourselves. I think if we log out and log back in, it even marks that. Let's check that real quick. Nope, it looks like it only does it on queries. We can actually clear this out by setting this back to 0, doing a db.system.profile.drop, and then turning it back on. There's another command that just says set profile. I think set db.setProfiler. Yeah, profiling level to 2. That's a lot easier to kind of call. I'm going to do this in one line. Do db.system.profile.drop. I just want to clean it out from our queries. And then db.set. Oops, set this to 0. You turn it off to delete it or drop it. Then we're going to turn it back on. Profiling level. Set that back to 2. It's not a function. I mean, it's not a function. db set profile should be a function. db.set profiling to 2. Okay, to 0. Okay, we set it to 0. We can drop it now. It's weird that it was saying it wasn't a function. Maybe it's just not liking my one-liner. Okay, it says true. You can actually see that in the show collections. Files is all that's left. And if we set it back to 2, I must have spelled something wrong. There we go. 2. Then it'll come back in our collections. So at this point, all we have to do really is wait. Continuing on, it's been a couple minutes. Changed up my command a little bit to be db.systemprofilefind, and then only print if the client is not equal to our IP. And if we run it, looks like we get a hit. And it looks like we have a hit from 193, 95, 217. And just looking at it, it looks like they're querying files to see if anything exists. And since nothing does, they're going to exit. And then since this is just asking for an IP address, let's put that guy in. Oh, gotta go through this again. Hit submit. And we can see that that's the solution. Overall, this challenge wasn't too difficult. It was just a little bit more understanding of what occurs within MongoDB and searching through logs and docs on trying to identify what permissions we have and what ability we can do. The biggest part probably is trying to identify that we have the ability to create new users or modify roles. We could have just modified our own role to have the ability to turn on the profiler and then turn on the profiler, which allows us to identify people or accounts that try and run any commands. But with that, that's the end of this challenge, and thanks for watching.